He took on the pro wrestling world and conquered it. Then took that formula and turned WrestleMania into Musclemania.
Daddy's coming home!
Spoiler alert, he couldn't.
Peace out, my brothers!
Because McMahon wanted more.
You will worship me!
He wanted to make money.
It's all about the money!
But not this video, because WWE demonetized it.
Life sucks! And then you die!
But my channel doesn't have to, so it would be great if you could hit subscribe and like.
Oh, hell no!
I know. But like Vince, I've got some crazy ideas for this channel and could use some more support.
And I want more!
To understand the World Bodybuilding Federation, you have to understand Vince McMahon. This is a man who's been obsessed with three things: money, spectacle, and muscles. Before McMahon, pro wrestling was small time, a patchwork of 30 or so regional fiefdoms, pot-bellied guys working headlocks in front of chain-smoking locals. Promoters stayed in their lanes. Territories were sacred. Deals were sealed with handshakes and protected by an unspoken code. McMahon looked at all that and said, "Yeah, that's not gonna work for me, brother." He bought the Worldwide Wrestling Federation from his father, Vince McMahon Sr. in 1982, and set out to burn the old system down. He wanted to take pro wrestling mainstream. And the key to that vision was cable television. In 1983, McMahon struck a deal with the fledgling USA Network, putting the newly renamed World Wrestling Federation on national television. Before that, fans could only watch local wrestling. You saw whatever your regional promoter fed to the local station. It blew the doors off the old territory system and turned wrestling into a coast-to-coast spectacle. Then, he went hunting. During the early to mid-80s, McMahon raided the territories, luring away their biggest stars with promises of national fame and bigger paydays. Guys like Roddy Piper and Ricky Steamboat from Mid-Atlantic, Junkyard Dog and Paul Orndorff from Georgia Championship Wrestling, Ted DiBiase and Jim Duggan from Mid-South, Bret Hart and Jim Neidhart from Stampede Wrestling, Randy Savage and Jimmy Hart out of Continental Wrestling, and he bled the AWA dry, taking Bobby the Brain Heenan, Jesse the Body Ventura, Gene Okerlund, and the biggest piece of all, Hulk Hogan.
Nose to nose and toes to toes, there's not a man alive that can get in a squared circle and pin me to the mat. And Ted DiBiase, you're making the mistake of your life. You are planning your destiny. I will definitely eliminate you from the squared circle in the professional wrestling career from now on.
Yeah, he came a long way. And those 30 or so promoters, well, they hated Vince McMahon. Didn't matter though. One by one, they folded or they were bought out. And he didn't just hire pro wrestlers, he branded them. He slapped gimmicks on those awkward regional wrestlers and turned them into live-action cartoon superheroes with biceps. It wasn't wrestling anymore, it was Vince McMahon's show. And front and center of his show was a ring runway of roided-up action figures come to life. In the WWF, being huge and jacked was practically the whole job description. McMahon didn't just admire muscle, he worshipped it. And he worshipped the work. McMahon was legendary for his work ethic and for being a control freak, rarely taking a day off, and was about to make the biggest gamble of his life in 1985, WrestleMania.
It was a huge gamble, the biggest gamble I've ever been involved with. It was a roll of the dice.
McMahon didn't just mortgage his house, he leveraged his entire company. Failure would have bankrupted him and ended the WWF. And wrestling insiders, the same ones he put out of business, were hoping he would fail. And instead of pay-per-view, he went even riskier. Closed-circuit theaters. He bet people would leave their homes to watch wrestling on a big screen. And they did. But McMahon, ever the showman, didn't just book wrestlers, he mixed them with the era's biggest stars. Mr. T, Cyndi Lauper, Liberace, and Muhammad Ali. Wrestling wasn't just wrestling anymore, it was sports entertainment. The gamble paid off huge. It made millions, turned Hulk Hogan into a pop icon, killed the territories, and launched the WWF into global stardom. McMahon didn't just own wrestling, he is wrestling. So what does a guy like him do next? He says to himself, you know what this empire needs? More muscles. Way more muscles. It's the start of the 90s. Just 5 years after WrestleMania, McMahon had conquered wrestling, but he wasn't satisfied. His next move? More muscles. It started small, a magazine, bodybuilding lifestyles. But McMahon never does anything small. That magazine was a Trojan horse. The real plan was an all-out war with bodybuilding's ruling brothers, Joe and Ben Weider. They were to bodybuilding what McMahon was to wrestling. Joe was the visionary who created the Mr. Olympia contest and a publishing empire with Muscle and Fitness. And Ben was the president of the International Federation of Bodybuilders, who took the sport global. For decades, they controlled the contracts, the magazines, the supplements, and the competitions. But McMahon didn't just want to compete. He wanted to do to the bodybuilding world what he did to the wrestling world. Reinvent it with his vision. In his mind, posing wasn't enough. He wanted drama, catchphrases, stage names. He wanted to turn Mr. Olympia into a global icon, just like he did with Hulk Hogan. September 15th, 1990, Chicago, Mr. Olympia weekend. The biggest night in bodybuilding, the Super Bowl of Muscle. Over 4,000 fans ready to see Lee Haney win his 7th straight title. But while everyone was focused on the flexing and the posing, McMahon was preparing to strike. He and Tom Platz, a bodybuilding icon named the Quadfather for his freakishly massive legs, had been hanging around all day at their booth. Platz wasn't just muscle, he had credibility. A former Mr. Universe champion, he was respected by the entire industry, the kind of name that earned legitimacy for McMahon. But this wasn't a promo tour, it was a protein bomb ready to get dropped. As the show wrapped, Platz grabbed the mic and stunned the audience with a surprise announcement: the formation of the World Bodybuilding Federation. A wave of models marched through the arena handing out glossy WBF promo packs that promised dramatic new events and the richest prize money in the history of the sport. All right in the middle of the IFBB's biggest night of the year, Mr. Olympia. And while the crowd was still processing what the hell just happened, McMahon's team were slipping contract offers to some of the bodybuilders at the event. Challenging the Weiders like this was like trying to launch a new baseball league by ambushing the World Series and having Reggie Jackson deliver the announcement. McMahon, the ultimate risk taker, had just declared war in the most dramatic way possible. The Weiders were blindsided and embarrassed on the sport's biggest night. Publicly, Ben Weider, ever the diplomat, tried to play it cool and told the media, "I'm not angry, you can quote me." But privately, the brothers were furious. And they retaliated the only way the Weiders knew how: threats. They issued a memo threatening banishment for any athlete who joined McMahon. No more IFBB exposure, which meant no more Mr. Olympia. Now for a bodybuilder, losing out at a chance at Mr. Olympia wasn't just losing a contest. It was losing the one championship they basically built their entire lives around. This was the same tactic that the Weiders had used for years to crush rival bodybuilding promotions. And usually, it worked. But this time, they were squaring off against Vince McMahon. And McMahon, he isn't interested in joining the game. Like he did with wrestling, he wanted to completely rewrite it. January 30th, 1991, New York's Plaza Hotel. McMahon hosted a lavish press conference to reveal his first official WBF roster. 13 bodybuilders decked out in matching neon green jackets, black tank tops, and shorts. They looked like a jacked up boy band. Tom Platz told the media, "I look forward to the day when a WBF superstar is on an airplane and a tall black man looks over and says, 'Hey, I saw you on TV last night.' And that tall black man is Magic Johnson." Okay. During the announcement, McMahon criticized the Weiders and claimed his WBF was bodybuilding the way it was meant to be. Oh yeah, and drug testing? When asked if the WBF would drug test, they said it would be on an educational basis. Translation, we're not testing anybody. But here's what McMahon had that the Weiders didn't: guaranteed contracts, big league production values, and most importantly, national TV exposure. For bodybuilders who spent their lives sleeping on gym floors and paying their own airfare to shows, this was an amazing deal. The chance at national fame. Bodybuilding was not exactly mainstream, so why wouldn't McMahon be able to pull off exactly what he did with wrestling? The centerpiece of McMahon's strategy was a weekly television show called BodyStars, airing on the USA Network. Then came the magazine, Bodybuilding Lifestyles, slick layouts, bold claims, and of course full-page ads for ICOPRO, the Integrated Conditioning Program, McMahon's shiny new supplement line that would become the WBF's primary revenue stream. This wasn't just another protein shake. McMahon swore it would be the Nike of bodybuilding. You couldn't watch the WWF in the early 90s without seeing an ICOPRO ad. "You gotta want it," they screamed. WWF SuperStars suddenly became the faces of ICOPRO ads.
You gotta want it every day. It takes an integrated approach to training, and that is what ICOPRO is all about. Gotta want it.
You gotta want.
McMahon saw it all coming together: TV, merch, supplements, storylines. He was copying and pasting the WWF blueprint onto a whole new industry. May 18th, 1991, New York City Night of Champions. If Vince McMahon was going to invade the Weider's turf, they were going to put on a show of their own. On stage, 13 tombstones, each one carved with the name of a bodybuilder who had defected to McMahon's glitzy new WBF. And then, in a moment ripped straight from McMahon's own playbook, IFBB competitors smashed those tombstones to pieces. But let's rewind just a year earlier, the 1990 Night of Champions. A relatively unknown bodybuilder named Dorian Yates had shocked everyone by placing second. He made $12,000, but still had to pay his own airfare and hotel. After that breakout performance, McMahon wanted him badly for the WBF.
They flew me out first class. Never been first class before. Flew me out first class to New York. I met some of the wrestlers, and then I went around the whole TV station and seen the little dolls, and you know, like, you see how big this is? Professional wrestling. We're going to do this with professional bodybuilding, and we want you on board. I thought about it, and I was like, you know what? If you want to be the best bodybuilder in the world, it's Mr. Olympia. That's the number one thing. And these new guys of the new federation, I called Tom Platz, and it was one of the hardest things I had to do, because I had to tell Tom Platz as well. It was like my hero. He wanted me on board. I told him, listen, sorry, I thought about this and everything, and it's a great offer. Can, you know, really appreciate it, but I think I can be Mr. Olympia, and that's what I'm going to go for. So
it was a massive gamble, and it paid off for him. Yates won the 1991 Night of Champions, then would go on to win 6 Mr. Olympia titles, becoming one of the most legendary champions in bodybuilding history. The guy McMahon could have had, the guy who said no. June 15th, 1991, the Trump Taj Mahal, Atlantic City, New Jersey. This was it, McMahon's grand debut, the WBF Championship, his WrestleMania of Muscle. The event was co-hosted by Regis Philbin, at the time America's most beloved TV host, and Bobby the Brain Heenan, with guest appearances by Miss Elizabeth and the Macho Man Randy Savage. And the production? Absolutely insane. Dancing girls, pyro, costumes, laser lights, original theme songs, guys descending from the ceiling. The bodybuilding world had never seen anything like it before. McMahon tried to force his bodybuilders, guys who spent their lives staring silently at themselves in a mirror, into over-the-top wrestling gimmicks.
You seem very lucky tonight.
Naturally.
What's your name?
DeMay. Barry DeMay.
Tell me, why do they call you the Giant Killer?
Well, in the old days, and now in the new days, I used to crush all these guys like there's no tomorrow, and I'm still going to continue to do it.
Ah! Whoa, look out here! Danny Padilla! The rock and roll wild child, and he's hard as a rock.
This is Troy. If you're trying to get a hold of me, you probably catch me at the beach. Just look where all the girls are, rubbing oil all over my body. Guys, have a good day.
The challenge of bodybuilding motivates me. And the aspects which I'm talking about is the physical, the mental, the emotional, and the spiritual.
Like anything in life, you want it, you gotta work for it.
So man, what's the secret?
Yeah,
Just
find a secret. Yeah. Too legit to quit.
Oh, the 90s. The only time where a South African-born professional bodybuilder can drop an MC Hammer line to inspire a group of young Chicanos, then hitting some weights before cruising Beverly Hills, all set to pulsing synthesized workout beats. That was Gary Stridham. And a week before the championship, McMahon described Stridham as better looking than Robert Redford and with a better physique than Superman. And here's McMahon practically foaming at the mouth on commentary, going full-on Vince McMahon.
Here he comes, Gary Stridham. Wow, take a look at that. Oh my goodness. Holy cow. Side chest, give it to him. What a roll. Oh no, look at that. Ooh. Muscular package we've seen. Look at this.
In the end, Gary Stridham won the championship and a prize of $275,000. By comparison, the IFBB's Mr. Olympia prize was just $100,000. With Stridham, McMahon thought he had his bodybuilding Hulk Hogan, but behind that oiled up grin and $1 million lighting, the whole thing was already cracking. Bodybuilding Lifestyles, the magazine that McMahon had banked on, was bleeding cash, reportedly losing up to $200,000 a month, even after rebranding the covers to WBF magazine. And unlike the WWF, there was no merch machine, no Saturday morning cartoons, no foam fingers or action figures, just glossy centerfolds of jacked up guys in metallic banana hammocks. Turns out, there weren't millions of people lining up to see that. Meanwhile, McMahon's weekly TV show, BodyStars, was quietly becoming a backstage punchline. The production crew, mostly from the WWF, had no idea what to do with these guys. They had to shoot slow-motion footage of men flexing in silence while mood lighting pulsed behind them. One cameraman summed it up perfectly. It was like filming a perfume commercial for cyborgs. And here's the real problem. Shocker, these guys weren't entertainers. They were elite athletes used to silence, structure, and discipline. Not promos, gimmicks, or trying to work a crowd. Yes, they looked incredible, and yes, it takes an incredible amount of discipline, hard work, and, some chemical injections to get those physiques, but they had zero charisma. Posing just doesn't prepare you for cutting promos on live TV. It was awkward, it was cringy, and it alienated hardcore bodybuilding fans who felt that their sport was being turned into a phony sideshow. But McMahon wasn't gonna back down. If he couldn't make stars, he'd buy them. Now here's the thing. At the time, the average person could only name one, maybe two bodybuilders at most. First, Arnold Schwarzenegger. Now Arnold wasn't happening, he was off being the biggest movie star on earth. So Vince went after the next best thing. In late summer of 1991, McMahon signed a 40-year-old long-retired Lou Ferrigno, the Incredible Hulk himself. Ferrigno was retired from bodybuilding for 17 years at that point. Didn't matter though, McMahon gave him a 2-year guaranteed $1 million deal. It made Ferrigno the highest paid bodybuilder in history, and instantly the face of the WBF. And that caused serious heat in the WWF locker room. Because while McMahon was busy pouring millions into his shiny new muscle pageant, his WWF superstars were getting screwed.
Yeah, they went down. I really noticed that when they ordered the WBF, when they brought World Bodybuilding Federation, our paychecks went way down because, he had to pay all those guys, and he was paying those guys good. And it pissed a lot of us off because we're doing all the work. We're making all the money for them. And these guys aren't doing nothing, and they're making all this money, and it like I say, it pissed a lot of us guys off.
WBF BodyStars didn't wrestle, they didn't bump, they didn't cut promos, they just tanned, worked out, oiled up, posed, and cashed their checks. And yet, they got it all. First-class airfare, luxury hotels, rental cars, per diem, and most importantly, guaranteed money contracts. Meanwhile, over on the WWF, they were on the road 300 nights a year, driving themselves from town to town, sharing motel rooms, and breaking their backs bumping around the ring. No health insurance, no off-season, no guaranteed contracts. And to make things worse, WBF salaries were being subsidized by WWF profits. That their merch sales, their ticket revenue, their blood, sweat, and broken bones were being used to bankroll a vanity project full of jacked up mannequins and neon thongs. Even Hall of Famer and notoriously bitter Bret the Hitman Hart didn't think too highly of them either.
When the bodybuilding thing started, there's these bodybuilders, and who likes bodybuilders? I mean, talk about it zeros in life, you know, I mean, there's nothing, I can't say anything good about bodybuilders at all. What a total waste of your life, you know.
And then there was Lex Luger. To McMahon, Luger was the crown jewel, the total package. McMahon thought he found someone who could bring mainstream wrestling fans over to his muscle empire. Luger was still under contract with WCW, that's World Championship Wrestling, the #2 wrestling company in America, and Vince's main rival at the time, but he pitched himself directly. He told McMahon point blank, "If I can get out of this contract, I want in." McMahon was thrilled, and to avoid any legal headaches, he signed Luger to a WBF deal in early '92, planning to make him the next face of the WBF. But unfortunately for Luger, he got into a motorcycle crash. He wrecked his arm and was ruled out of competition. So instead, McMahon gave him a mic and turned him into a co-host on BodyStars. The show dropped the pretense of being a sports program and morphed into this really weird, strange, pastel-colored fitness lifestyle thing, complete with cooking segments, fashion tips, and, as Vince McMahon himself coined, hanging and banging. It was supposed to make bodybuilding fun. Instead, it made it unwatchable. Ratings tanked and it turned the promotion into a money pit. And if that wasn't bad enough, the government, they came a-knockin'. It's early 1992 and the WWF is hit with a grand jury subpoena from the Eastern District of New York. Vince McMahon was now the target of a federal investigation into steroid distribution. This was the fallout from the George Zahorian case. Now, Zahorian was a former WWF ringside doctor. He had just been convicted of trafficking anabolic steroids. And when the feds squeezed him, Zahorian folded fast. He gave them everything. Shipping logs, payment receipts, handwritten orders, boxes shipped straight to WWF headquarters, some of them marked for Vince McMahon himself. It was a gift-wrapped scandal, and it had McMahon's name all over it. It was bad. So bad, in fact, that Vince McMahon was about to get dragged into court to answer whether Hulkamania was natty or not. Yes, that Hulk Hogan. The one who told kids to say your prayers and eat your vitamins, while casually skipping over the part where the vitamins came in syringes. Now, McMahon was about to sit under oath and explain how his roster of human action figures dipped in testosterone got that way.
Well, you're gonna get sick of it, because this freaking nature right here is just beginning to swell. And when I get big enough, brother, there ain't gonna be room for anybody else but me and all the warriors floating through the veins and the power of the warrior.
Yeah, steroids weren't the only thing these guys were on. Federal court wasn't WrestleMania. There weren't no promos to cut, no theme music, no crowd to work, just lawyers, evidence, and years of built-up suspicion. And for once in his life, Vince McMahon wasn't booking the show. March 1992, McMahon made a move that shocked everyone. The WBF would begin drug testing. This wasn't just a policy change, it was a complete 180. McMahon was now asking bodybuilders whose physiques were built on pharmaceuticals to go clean overnight. Most of them freaked out about being told to give up their drugs just 3 months before the second WBF championship. Guys worried that they'd look like gym rats, not Greek gods, that their mass and size would be gone. But something was gone: Lou Ferrigno. Once the new drug testing policy was announced, all of a sudden, he cited carpal tunnel surgery as his reason for leaving the company. Some athletes were hit with fines and suspensions. Others began losing just enough size and sharpness that fans and insiders started to take notice. Rumors spread that McMahon was getting cold feet though. Some say in the final weeks before the WBF Championship, testing quietly stopped, just to make sure the guys would actually look presentable on stage. But by then, it didn't matter. The momentum was gone, the physiques didn't pop. McMahon even tried to calm the noise down by announcing drug testing for his cash cow, the WWF.
That's why, when you see this symbol, you can be assured of drug-free sports entertainment that you and your entire family can be proud of.
Yeah, no one was buying that. And ICOPRO, still flopping, even with McMahon plugging it every chance he got on WWF programming. The supplements, they just weren't selling. And those WWF SuperStars promoting it on TV, they weren't even using it. Many of them said it tasted like garbage. Customers who did use it reported negative side effects like gas and bloating, and not really seeing any success. Too expensive, too gimmicky, and forever tied to a league that was clearly circling the drain. June 13th, 1992, Long Beach Convention Center in California. This was it, Vince McMahon's last stand. The moment he would prove that bodybuilding could become a pay-per-view juggernaut just like professional wrestling. Instead, it was a funeral. To put it in perspective, WWF WrestleMania 8, just months earlier, pulled in 390,000 pay-per-view buys. The WBF Championship? Barely 3,000. That's less than 1% of a WWF pay-per-view. The WBF's biggest event had attracted fewer viewers than a typical high school football game. And McMahon, well, he went full-on Vince McMahon for this one. I mean, it was completely unhinged. There were these mini-movies that would play for each of the bodybuilders, like Danny Padilla wandering through a land of giants for some reason, Jetman Tony Pearson living out his Top Gun fantasies, David Dirth rocking out with a fireworks-spitting guitar. Okay, that was sort of cool. The Iron Man Mike Christian being forged from steel on stage. And Troy Zuccolotto, well, there's this.
Thank you so much. How can I ever repay you?
Well, there's gotta be some way. I'm sure Troy will think of something.
Yeah, that's not creepy. And knowing now what we know about Vince McMahon, moving along, we also had the executioner Johnny Morant save some people from an obese-looking executioner before literally murdering him on stage, then doing some axe-handle flex poses, as one would naturally do. Think we're at max level goofiness? Not yet, because we also had Mighty Mike Quinn break out of jail, then run to the stage to do some very, suggestive poses, only then to commit assault on 2 police officers before running off. Only Vince McMahon could look at bodybuilding, an already niche sport, and think, you know what this needs? Characters, costumes, onstage felonies, and a guy in a Speedo mowing down ninjas with a machine gun mid-pose.
Oh, look at him. They're coming at him from... Bullets are flying all over the place. Oh, I'm getting down. Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, all that happened in a wild 2-hour Vince McMahon fever dream of a muscle pay-per-view. In the end, the guy who was too legit to quit, Gary Stridham, ended up winning for a second time in a row. Critics destroyed the show. Bodybuilding diehards laughed at it. Thanks to the steroid testing, the WBF roster looked smaller, softer, those freak show physiques was gone. The so-called BodyStars described the locker room vibe backstage as depressed. Guys were moody, weaker in training, and to top it all off, they had to do these really goofy skits. Even the legendary Tom Platz, who was on commentary, called out how flatter some of the guys were. Wrestling fans were baffled. Why was Vince lighting money on fire for this? All that muscle, all that hype, all that money, and absolutely no return. Actually, maybe some return. Those skits are hilarious to watch 30 years later. July 15th, 1992. McMahon picked up the phone, rang up the Weider brothers, and surrendered. The World Bodybuilding Federation was officially dead. Gone like it never existed. It burned through $15 million in just over a year. And in their one final televised appearance, some of the BodyStars faced off against WWF SuperStars in a beachside tug-of-war contest. The wrestlers let go of the rope on purpose, leaving the bodybuilders tumbling all over themselves. And the SuperStars would actually go on to beat the BodyStars in the end. It was humiliating and perfectly summed up the WBF's final chapter. McMahon learned the hard way. Being king of wrestling didn't mean you could rule anything with the stage and spotlight. And charisma? You can't exactly just inject that. McMahon tried salvaging the ICOPRO business by pleading with the Weiders for advertising in their magazines. Didn't matter though, that brand also died. He also asked the Weiders to go easy on the bodybuilders who defected. The Weiders agreed, sort of. They slapped a hefty $25,000 fine on anyone who wanted back in the IFBB. And at the 1993 Night of Champions, Dorian Yates came out dressed like a preacher, flanked by tombstones on stage. Then, one by one, the ex-WBF athletes rose from the coffins and smashed their headstone to pieces. It was supposed to symbolize their rebirth, except, so wait, the tombstones were destroyed 2 years earlier, but then they were brought back to get destroyed again. It just doesn't make any sense, but whatever, it was the 90s. And you have to admit, McMahon's WBF did make some impact. The Weiders were getting theatrical, but more importantly, they raised their prize money. The World Bodybuilding Federation might have been doomed from the start, because the timing was brutal. The federal investigation into WWF steroid use began in 1991, the same year McMahon launched a league full of very unnatural-looking bodybuilders. That investigation would spiral into a full-blown trial by 1994. McMahon himself was now facing charges for distributing steroids to his own roster. He stood trial, facing years in prison, his company at risk of collapse. It almost looked like the WWF was about to go the way of the WBF. But not this time. McMahon was eventually acquitted, and he made sure to let everyone know that he beat the government. Because even though McMahon's WWF was near death, they had no idea that in just 3 years, they would be reborn into something louder, bloodier, and more successful than McMahon had ever dreamed of. Looking back, McMahon's WBF was ridiculous, overproduced, and totally over the top. But hey, it was the 90s. McMahon tried to force his sports entertainment formula onto a bodybuilding world that just didn't want it. But if you think that stopped Vincent Kennedy McMahon, think again, because just 9 years later, in 2001, he tried it all over again. This time, he was coming for the NFL by launching the XFL. He brought in pyro, nicknames on jerseys, cameras in locker rooms, over-the-top characters, storylines off the field, same playbook, different sport, same delusion, and just like the WBF, it died in about a year. But that's an entirely different story. Because that's who McMahon is. A promoter, a showman, a control addict, and let's be honest, a total freak. And that's definitely a whole nother video, probably one that I won't touch. Now Vince McMahon conquered wrestling, then tried to inject that same formula into bodybuilding, into football, and in the end, he had no chance in hell.
Shut up!